Hey, welcome back, everyone. It's your favorite video game podcast, the Chips
It
and Bits
is.
podcast. I'm your host this month, Matthew Anderson. With me, as always,
Kenny Myers.
there he is. How you doing,
Hello.
Kenny?
I'm sick again. I was sick on the
Oh,
last podcast. Never have kids.
wait, are you sick of the podcast, or?
Well, I mean, I've been sick of the podcast for about a decade, but in this particular case, and this is what sucks, every time, like, every cold now, we have to go get COVID tested.
Yep,
It's great. Anyway,
sounds amazing.
it's so fun.
So here we are. We're happy to have you.
Here we are.
As always, you can find us online at chips-and-bits.com. We're also on some social places: Twitter, Chips and Bits. Facebook's also Chips and Bits, but Patreon is Chips and Bits, spelled out.
We're
That's,
arguably on those places. It's more like advertising. We're mostly on our Discord via
yeah,
Patreon.
yeah. And I did want to plug the Discord, so thanks for the segue there, Kenny. We have a Discord community. If you are a patron, you'll get access to it automatically. And if you're a super secret special tier of patron, you can even ask us questions, which we will answer on our in between podcast, the Side Quest podcast, which we record in between our monthly episodes. It's for patrons only, and we answer some questions. So that's our
It's
Discord.
fun. I'm starting to like those podcasts more than these podcasts.
Shh!
Okay, sorry.
Don't tell anyone. This podcast
This podcast is obviously the best.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be
Yeah.
amazing because this month we are talking about Ratchet and Clank. Is it a Rift Apart? I forgot to check.
Oh no.
Nope. It's just Ratchet and Clank : Rift Apart.
It's good to have colons back, you know? We've been
I know.
colonless for a while.
It does. Feels like we had no colons for a while.
Let me cue up this theme song and then we'll do the thing.
Cool.
Ready? Okay.
And we're back like magic.
I feel like we need a higher fidelity version theme song.
Go for it.
Lossless audio coming into play now.
So, Ratchet and Clank, is this... I was trying to think just now, is this only the second PS5 game we've podcasted about?
This is...
We did Miles Morales.
No, I think this is the third.
I don't think Ghost of Tsushima counts because it was...
But we played it on PS5.
Yeah, but it was a PS4 game.
Now it's PS5.
Oh, Returnal. Yeah, we talked about Returnal.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We've talked about every PS5 game.
Yeah, so another PS5 game.
Except for Madden.
Another Ratchet and Clank. There's been a few of those as well. And I will I'll do a little bit of queuing up here for Kenny to share his opinion. My hopes going into this game are the same hopes that I always have for every Ratchet and Clank game that I play, and that is that I hope there are lots of story elements that just don't make any sense. There's tons of crazy particle effects and like weird fuzz and party jazz and graphical stuff, and it's just like super eye candy. I always want a Ratchet and Clank game to be basically like that summer popcorn movie, except in video game form, and that's what I was hoping before I started playing this game. Kenny, with that setup, I'd love to hear what you thought of Ratchet and Clank.
I like when you meta narrative on the podcast. You're like, well, I'm going to tee up Kenny with some opinions. All right, so I'm going to respond to Matt's question now with my own opinions based upon what he said.
That'd be great.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm doing now. I mean, by all measures, I think that is pretty much the apt description for Ratchet and Clank. It's a super fun game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It looks beautiful, although it's really interesting to compare it to PS4 games because the difference isn't as significant as you might hope. I think the significance comes into gameplay, like how it plays, obviously, versus how it looks, of what the PS5 can do. The story makes a certain amount of sense, as much as multiverse stories can. Here goes the yawning again.
I know.
God
We're always
damn it.
boring you.
It's been a while since I played this game, too.
It's like a Pavlovian response at this point.
I just don't sleep anymore since I've had children. Um, it's not mine, just the ones I've captured. Uh, it's it has crazy weapons, although like it doesn't have my favorite weapons in the series. Um, but it was a really fun entry. I actually platinumed this, and I really, when I platinum a game, it means I enjoyed it, like in general. Unless it's just like it was okay and the platinum is really easy, and then I'm just like, well, I don't think that's ever happened though. The last game I platinumed was God of War, so wait, no, that's a lie. Miles Morales, um, which I think to some degree kind of falls in a similar category as Ratchet and Clank. Um, it's
Interesting.
it's really a continuation of a really great series with a lot of the similar mechanics, higher fidelity, um, but a little more interesting story. I mean, it's a better game than Ratchet and Clank. I've only played one Ratchet and Clank game, and that was the one that was like the least beloved, but I loved it, which is when they did released a 4-player game for PS3.
I didn't play that one.
You did. You played it with us in
I
San
did?
Francisco a decade ago.
Is
Uh,
that the game we played?
yes, it was, and it was really, really fun to play that 4-player game. Matt loves 4-player single player games. You should see our Super Mario 3D World review for more on that. Yeah, Matt, my assumption is that you feel relatively the same, at least by that it hit your mark.
I feel relatively the same in the sense that it was a super fun game. Um, it did, to a certain extent, I went in with some expectations that I certainly felt weren't met. You hinted
Yes,
at one of them, and that is that I really, I wanted to take the Ferrari out. I wanted to get the PS5 all decked out and doing some cool stuff, just like Miles Morales did. And to a certain extent, like you were hinting at, um, there wasn't as much flash as I would have expected. It just felt like a really good game. Like it's not bad by any stretch.
no, it's well
Um,
polished. It's fun to
yeah,
play.
and actually more so than what I was expecting. I think the aesthetics of the worlds that you travel to, the different worlds are like super super well realized. They're very
Phenomenal.
very different from each other, and it really does change the scope of how each level feels. They're really fun to play, and I wasn't expecting that. But that it seemed like that came at the expense of sort of like the flash and the pizzazz of previous Ratchet and Clanks. There were also a couple of times when if there were tons and tons of enemies on the screen and I was doing a lot of moving and I was switching between guns and firing a lot of stuff, it wasn't like it slowed down a little. Like it felt like I could feel some lagging in the game, which also I wasn't expecting. To the other
Hmm.
point that you made, though, there were some things that this game does that you just couldn't do on another on a PS4 and its PS5 like specialty, and that was like the loading aspects of the game. I mean, like you would come into these crazy crazy realms and different worlds, and there'd be tons of textures and you could see for miles, and you'd fly in through the atmosphere and land your spaceship, and you just hop out of your ship, and then the camera would sort of like do that God of War like zoom in behind you, and it was like you were playing. Like there was no loading, there's never any transition, you were just right in the game all of a sudden. So they did a really good job there with sort of this immersive gameplay element, and you could only do that with a lack of a loading screen. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I was a little bit disappointed in sort of like the popcorn nature of it. So I guess like where I would end that thought would be the fact that I still came away from this game feeling like it was super fun and I had a great time playing it goes to show that even if you come in with unrealistically high expectations, it's still not going to disappoint you very much. But that was there in the back of my mind.
One of the things that actually kind of disappointed me was when they set up this game. The discussion was around the rifts. It's called a rift apart because you break open the multiverse, and essentially their demos as you like jumping through worlds and it loading real fast mid game. And I feel like they didn't deliver on that except for as like mechanics in one or two very specific levels, versus just like the idea that you get pulled into and out of different worlds as like a design theory for the game. It was really just the intro that had a lot of that, and that was really fun, and I was just like, oh man, this was great. um but the idea of jumping between dimensions and the chaos it causes really didn't like execute in that regard. Like there were some amazing levels, but to me they were more like Dishonored levels. Like they just like they were gimmick. They used it as a gimmick instead of as a main mechanic. And I was looking forward to more like not necessarily worlds, but sort of like context in that regard. Like one, like this is a pretty traditional platformer shooter. Like you go to worlds, you collect things, you solve the problem there, you move to the next world. But I was hoping it would be like, this is the context, you're jumping through different worlds to solve this particular problem, and then you move to the next context where things shift and change. um, and so that's what I thought was being delivered. uh, but what was delivered wasn't bad. And in fact, the ones with the gimmicks of the Rift world were phenomenal. Uh, but it did remind me that the very first world you go to after the big explosive opener in the city, like there's a really cool city, is one of the most boring levels in the
Yeah,
game.
it really
Like
was.
it's just like, so it took forever. It felt like the longest, but it was really just an uninteresting world compared to the rest, which were just thrilling. In particular, there was one that you jump between dimensions, and in one dimension, the planet is like completely held together. It's a mining operation, and then the alternate dimension, it's exploded into
Yeah,
pieces, and so gravity's completely absent. And you're jumping between them to get to different areas, and it was so spectacular to look at and play through. Or like Ratchet and Clank's really good at sense of humor, so there's like a pirate world that just has a really funny training sequence, like almost straight out of Monkey Island. Um, and that was really great. But like the mechanic of a dimensional rift, I felt was particularly, it wasn't really great.
yeah. It's funny for me to hear you say that actually because I hadn't even thought about it until you just brought it up, and now thinking back on it, I realized I hadn't thought about it because that aspect of the game just fades into the background,
Right.
and I just totally forgot that that was even a part of the game. And in hindsight, yeah, I mean, some of the cooler parts of this game were not when you accidentally went through rifts, because they use that in some of the action sequences and the quick time events. You sort of like fly in and out of dimensions as you're dropping from the sky or something before you land on another platform. But to Kenny's point, yeah, man, that world, they used it for pathing, right? It's like you'd get to a part where you couldn't cross a chasm, and then you'd flip dimensions. You'd hammer this crystal and switch dimensions, and then all of a sudden you were inside a building because that building doesn't exist in the other dimension because that planet had like, I can't remember if like the mine exploded or something happened, and it's just all blown apart. So yeah, that was really cool, and yeah, I too wish that there would have been more of that, and I only realized they didn't do that when you mentioned it.
Even cooler in that planet is what happened to the other universe is what you're trying to stop from happening in the constructed universe.
And you're
Um,
also meeting and interacting with multi-dimension versions of the same characters, which that part I felt like they did a pretty good job with too. The For example, the main little mini boss that's chasing you around that level, in one dimension it's a fearsome beast, and it's it's chasing you and it's trying to eat you. And then once you succeed at completing the mission, it's just this helpful lovable creature because you reunite it with its other half in the other dimension, and now it's a happy creature. So they did stuff like that too, which was really really lovely.
yeah, they inject so much personality into these games, in the weapons, even in like the special maneuvers. Like it just feels like, I don't know if you feel this way, but when you unlock the skating mechanism,
Oh yeah.
there's like a really cool right trigger left trigger skating mechanism. It never feels obnoxious. It always feels fun because you get a huge, like you're essentially gliding now on skis, on rollerblades, really. um and like that's so fun. story wise, it was really entertaining. They're always really good at characters. My favorite was when uh, they made this big, imposing, like skeleton robot that looked really scary. And then when you talk to it, it subverts that completely, which is interesting too, because I'm playing Psychonauts, and a lot of the stuff that's been pulled into other games is in Psychonauts, the first one, the original. Um, and like one of that Double Fine's favorite things to do is to like subvert expectations based on appearance. And Ratchet and Clank kind of continues that tradition. Um, but they did leave out my favorite weapon. They gave him a presence, but it makes me really sad that Mr. Zircon was replaced by a stupid fungus. That was really
Yeah.
dumb.
There
Like
were a couple. I remember when I first started playing, I believe I texted
Lord Scotland.
Lord Scotland that I was convinced that this was going to be one of those games where I was going to unlock and play with every weapon, because the first couple of weapons you unlock, they're so different and they're so versatile and they're so crazy. Like some of
Mm-hmm.
the differences between them are just insane. And then I think you get to weapon number 6 or something, and especially once they start swapping out the different grenade types, it didn't happen. I started being like, yeah, I don't really want to use these weapons. I'm just going to level up this shotgun and use the shotgun throughout the whole game. Now, there's a couple of achievements where you had to do it, so I did end up leveling some of them up.
Did you
But
get
yeah,
100%?
no, I did not. I'm close,
Okay.
but I haven't circled back to
Is it the
finish them up.
shield one? Is that one of the last ones?
I think I got that one.
Because I told you to. God damn that
Yes, and I
shield
immediately
achievement.
bought that weapon. I didn't have it yet.
Yeah, and you
Upgraded
have to
it.
upgrade it. It's such a pain in the ass.
But yeah, so I thought the weapon variety is there for sure.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's maybe twice, like 2 times too many weapons than the game needs to support the different things, because some of them do the same thing, they're just stylistically different,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't need to have that many.
Did you play on hard or normal?
I played on hard.
Okay. Yeah, because I was running out of ammo all the time, so I had to use all the different weapons.
No, I mean, I rotated through them frequently for that
Yeah.
exact
Okay.
reason,
Yeah.
but I didn't enjoy, it was only for ammo basically.
And there were moments where I was like, oh, this weapon, like I'm stuck with
Yeah.
this weapon.
Specifically, my least favorite was that stupid ricochet one where you fire it and then you have to keep pulling the trigger to bounce it through other enemies. It was just like, dude,
Oh
I don't
man,
want to
I
do
love that
this.
once. Once I
Ugh,
powered
hate it.
that up, it was so fun.
Nope, not me.
Well, you just got to be more coordinated.
But I also, yes, I'm happy that you mentioned the big robot, the fixer robot.
Yeah.
Another way that they did that was with Clank, in Clank's like doppelganger in the other dimension, is this tiny little bot who's a protector bot, but you don't know that at first. It's the same size as Clank, and she's tiny and very shy sounding and sort of quiet and
Mm-hmm.
not sure of herself. But then she can transform into this gigantic, like mega bot with lasers, and she can annihilate anything. And the first time that happens in the game, it's the same sort of effect where you're expecting this, I don't know, some sort of like cute party celebration gun or something, and instead it's literally a world destroyer, and you're just not expecting it. It was hilarious.
I really liked her, although her name I forget. Do you remember it?
Uh, no, doesn't she pick a name though?
She does. So there's Lombaxes, which is what Ratchet is, and then there's robots, which is what Clank is. And I thought that
Kit.
character was Kit. Kit was particularly compelling, but I thought Rivet was just not a good character. Like,
Yeah, it was fine.
she was just Ratchet again. There was really very little to distinguish her from Ratchet, and I thought that was a really missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Like they
I
had an
think
opportunity to like really introduce this unique character, and they really just made a clone of Ratchet.
yeah, the only main difference, surface level, is she's more hardened. Like she's slower to forgive, and they do make a point to point that out in the story. But otherwise, yeah, they're just the same.
But it's not like an amazing built
No,
up. Like it's kind of expected,
and then she
and
ends
it's
up
uninteresting.
forgiving anyways in the end. So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the real surface level is that it's a she. It's a female Lombax. Uh, so that was disappointing because I mean, even like the characters are so similar that even the like they're interchangeable. Like they're literally interchangeable on worlds, which is sad. Uh, they have no difference of skills. They share all the same weapons. Um, yeah, I feel like if they had made Ratchet just to customize them all, agendered Lombax, that would have been fine too. Like that would have like they could have just made it was that was like a very small complaint in a sea of really good stuff.
Sure.
Uh
Yeah, I can hear it.
um
Another thing I thought they did a really good job with, which was a point of contention for us with Miles Morales, is that there are some small but alternate gameplay mechanics in here as you swap characters. And whereas in Miles Morales, you never wanted to creep around and take photos of people as a journalist, in this one, it is kind of cool when they switch different paradigms. You can play as your robot pals, and when you do that, you go into these alternate dimensions, and you have to play this game where you just do weird problem solving stuff.
oh my
And
god.
then there's
That's
one
not the
where you get
bad one.
no, and then there's this one.
Oh god. This
There's this
was the
one
photography one.
where you're a photographer and you're a journalist and you crawl inside computers and then you run around and you kill viruses with your camera. Um, wait, I think I might be conflating two different terrible gameplay mechanics, but there's one of them in here, and I just wish that they would have either not done that or spent the time that they did with your character swapping story plays to make it as fun as those, because it was not fun.
I really enjoy the puzzle solving ones. Those are pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I
they
mean, they're
were
not
interesting.
amazing though. Like they're just like they're really weird, and the logic in the world is kind of silly that you can like summon a ball. Like it's like a ball moving game essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
it doesn't make any sense, and it's certainly not. I mean, I wouldn't play just that game,
right.
but I think why I would argue that it was good was because every time it came up, it felt like a good break. Like it felt like, okay, cool. I'm going to play this for a little bit. I don't have to focus on like jumping and dodging and firing and changing my weapons and doing that. Like just relax, grab some basketballs and throw them in some holes and hope that I get the robots across the river. And it always felt like a good break. And then you were right back into Ratchetville. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and then that virus game every time.
gosh,
It was the
every time it
worst.
was just like, oh God,
It
I
was
don't want
so
to do this
bad.
stupid virus.
Yeah, and like they it was, then they gave the virus personality. I just hated it.
Yeah.
I was like every time I had to do that, I like by the end I was like, "Oh, please no." Cuz it got like challenging enough where I'd die in it and I was just like, "Come on. This isn't worth that much."
Well, it's not like the movement was super slow and the levels were super vast, so that when you died, it was irritating to slowly crawl back through it or anything. Can you? I'm not sure why you had a problem
Or
with it.
like go upside down or you get lost on which way you're going because you went upside down and then flipped over. It was bad. That was bad. But not enough to make the game less fun.
Nope, definitely not.
In particular, this Ratchet and Clank game did an amazing job of an intro. The intros are always fun in these games. Like they're always really well done. But I
For the
really
characters,
loved
what do you mean?
like the introductory scene, the parade.
Oh yes, yeah,
Like the opening sequence introduces a lot of things really well, and it's really funny and it's eventful. And to the same matter, I really actually loved the boss fight, the final boss fight. I thought um, it was really not necessarily clever, but just enjoyable. Like that's like this game. This game really isn't that clever um, in its like mechanics. Uh, it's clever in its writing and it's clever in its characters uh, and world design. But like, I guess those are mechanics, really, if you wanted to be semantic about it. But like, its gameplay feels like a game you've played before, just a polished version of it. And that boss fight felt exactly the same way, just really enjoyable and a nice conclusion to the whole world traversing stuff.
yeah. I think my favorite part of the game, as funny as it sounds, were the morts.
The Morts were the mechanics. Is it because they sound like they're Canadian?
No, first of all, they don't sound like they're Canadian. They sound like strong Midwestern accent.
Minnesotans.
Yeah, like South Dakota or North Dakota.
Yeah.
But they're
Aren't the
all
Morts in the very boring world?
what?
Which ones are the Morts?
The Morts are in the world that has water running through it, and that's where you fly on the dragon.
Yeah, that's that's the worst level in the game.
Yeah. But the Morts are great. They're all named Mort. So like
You just like them because they remind you of home.
and it's just hilarious because they look like I don't even know how to describe them. They kind of look like a mogwai mixed with a raccoon. And
That are
they're all
green. I think they're green or
no,
blue.
they're brown. They have like brown hair.
Well, green and blue is brown.
No, they're not green or
So
blue. They're brown,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're
So
all
green
named
and blue.
Mort. So
Yeah, yeah.
every time you encounter one, you're like, "Oh, hey, Mort," and they all have the same name. And then they respond with like, "Oh yeah, how you doing?" It makes absolutely no sense why they look that way, why they talk that way, and so it's just for shits and giggles. But they're hilarious.
Oh man, that dragon flight mechanic was so obnoxious.
That you know what? Yes, that was actually a terrible, terrible part of the game.
Yeah. There's all these like little mini games that are just not like those two were the worst. That level was pretty bad. Like
It
getting on
was.
the snails and going around was like fun at first and then obnoxious. Uh and then you got to fly. There's all these different things, but it's just a very boring level. It's literally just green. I think it's greeny brown water.
Yeah,
I can't
Green
tell
Brown Water.
colors anymore. You threw me off.
I'm sorry.
Um and it's just like just a crappy level. Just a crappy level. And there's an arena, of course. There's
Yep.
always an arena, but the arena is entertaining and amazing looking and looks so good. Like not the actual arena because that's a circle as it is, um, but like the area surrounding it is super fun. Zircon Jr. It's just like they're spitting in my face though. I just want Mr. Zircon back. They had Mrs. Zircon and Zircon Jr., but Mr. Zircon nowhere to be seen.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time, which
Maybe
it
he was
looks like there
in
might be.
another rift. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to talk while you were yawning?
God damn it! You're not supposed to tell them. I went away from the mic.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry,
it's
man.
live stream. You can see us on video.
Yeah, but I guess that's true. I forget where we are anymore.
Well, is there anything else you want to share, or would you like to go to bed?
Very funny. I like this game. I would totally recommend it. It's super fun. If you like platformer shooters, it's really enjoyable. It's the right amount of challenge without like being crazy. And there's a lot of really fun events throughout all of it. A lot of little surprises, but nothing groundbreaking.
Yep, I totally agree. It's quick enough that the things that are annoying aren't going to annoy you too much, and the other things that are there, even though they're not the most impressive thing you've ever played, they're very the substance is great and it's super fun to play. And yeah, it's not a summer blockbuster, but it's haven't been to the movies in a while and it feels great to play. It's that sort of game. So yeah, definitely would recommend it.
It's interesting, just as an end note, like playing Psychonauts right now, which was made in like 2008, and just the amount of creativity in each of those levels is just so astounding that like reviewing Ratchet and Clank and thinking about the stuff that I've just been playing through. This is the original Psychonauts, not two. Although I've heard that has good reviews. It's just like, oh man, like when given an insane person's idea, you can make really cool platformers like shooters, and this is like a good one.
All
It's like
right.
the Marvel origin story of shooters.
That has a deep cut, but okay. I'll let you have it. That's good. All right, we'll end it there. This has been the Chips and Bits podcast, and we hope you enjoyed it as always. I was your host this month, Matthew Anderson, and the sleepy guy over here is
Kenny Myers.
yeah. Thanks, Kenny. Thanks for joining us, Kenny.
Well, uh, it took a while to wake up, but I'm glad I could be here.
We will see you again in a month. What are we podcasting about next month?
Death's Door.
Death's
Dun.
Door. A tiny little indie game.
Came up by surprise. I love when these things like appeal enough out of nowhere, just comes
Yeah.
swoops in like a
We'll
bird.
we'll see if it ends up remaining to feel like a tiny little indie game. yeah, so thanks for joining us as always. We're happy you were here, and we'll see you again next month.
Love you.
Bye.